Hey everyone, it's Quickie Baby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and yeah, today's going to be an exciting one. I'm going to give you a full review and gameplay of the first wheeled vehicle in World of Tanks. It is the Panhard EBR. I'm going to be letting you know everything there is to know about this tank, including the new game mechanics, the boost mode, the different drive modes this vehicle has, how it has an enhanced auto-aim feature, exactly what you have to do to immobilize this tank, and how much damaging one, two, or more of the wheels will affect its mobility. This thing is going to be the fastest tank in the game, and it can go backwards just as fast as it can go forwards. Let's jump straight into it. So the Panhard EBR-75 is a Tier 8 premium French wheeled light tank, and as of yet I have absolutely no details of when and how this will come to the game. So I've already reviewed the statistics of this vehicle in a previous video, and nothing really much has changed since then. Let's just highlight the best features. This vehicle, as the name would suggest, uses a 75mm main armament with 175 average damage, 180 standard pen, with APCR with 1,300 meters a second shell velocity, 220mm of heat pen as its premium rounds, and also the vehicle gets high explosive rounds with 75mm of penetration, where the alpha damage increases from 175 up to 260. Now this thing has an autoloader, but it only contains 2 shells per magazine, meaning that if you load standard ammunition, you can do 350 damage if you penetrate both of the shots, and if you load HE, well, your penetration drops massively, but your clip potential goes up to 520, which can be very nice for going in and taking out those self-propelled guns, or alternatively, taking out light tanks. And if you manage to penetrate HE, then your damage per minute goes up massively. Luckily, the intra-clip reload of this tank is exceptionally good at 1.5 seconds, and it's only tanks like the TVP T50/51 that have such good intra-clip reload. Also, the aim time of this tank is absolutely ludicrous at 1.15. This has the lowest aim time of any tank in World of Tanks. And when you combine this with a ridiculous turret traverse speed of 70 degrees a second, this means that this thing is just able to quickly engage its targets and not even have to flinch before it fires off its first round once it's identified them. The tank's accuracy is neither great nor bad at 0.36, the same as the STB-1 I believe, but the vehicle has insanely good dispersion values when moving and also when turning the turret, which when combined with the aim time and vertical stabilizers means this thing is pretty much as accurate on the move as it is when it's stationary. Well, thinking about it, that might be a slight exaggeration. You're definitely more accurate when you're completely stationary, but let's just say it like this. If you're the kind of player who likes to bomb it around, never really stop to snipe, and is always constantly firing on the move, then there's going to be no better vehicle for you. The vehicle has 2 different mobility modes. It has a cruise mode, which increases the vehicle's tank traverse, enabling it to duck and weave, or alternatively circle slow enemy vehicles. You can see which mode your vehicle is currently in, as there's an in-game speedometer. You can change the mode that you're currently in from cruise mode to rapid mode or vice versa by pressing the same key that you would do to switch into siege mode in your Swedish tank destroyers. By default that's X, however, I found it very useful to rebind this onto a mouse button. I'll be talking more about that later. Now inside this rapid mode, the top speed limit of the tank increases from 60 up to 80. However, your traverse speed falls, and so it can make the vehicle very awkward for trying to go round tight corners. And in addition to this rather amazing top speed limit of 80, the vehicle's reverse speed is the same as forwards, which means that when you're inside the rapid travel mode, you can go backwards at 80. When you combine this with an incredible power to weight ratio of over 33, it allows you to accelerate up to top speed very quickly. In addition to this, the vehicle has great gun depression at 8 degrees, and with an excellent crew and fully pimped out, I was able to get the camo rating of the vehicle up to about 40 or 42%. However, this is where the good news ends, because ladies and gents, this vehicle has 2 very big issues. Number 1, it is a very large target to hit side on, as are most of the French vehicles that you will encounter in World of Tanks. I found that personally, when you're just driving straight at your opponents and you're wiggling, this is still quite a tricky tank to hit. However, if they do get the broad side of this vehicle, especially at 50 to 100 meters, it doesn't really matter if you're driving at 80 kilometers an hour, it's still a pretty easy hit. In addition to this, the vehicle has practically no armor, with 40mm at the front, only 30 on the turret, and the side is 16mm thick, which means that quite often enemies will be able to hit your tracks. Sorry, I mean wheels. I'm probably going to mess that up so many times with this, as it's a completely new concept, and they're also going to overmatch your hull and damage your tank. And considering that this vehicle has 950 hit points, yeah, it really doesn't go a long way with regards to the tank's durability. Also, and this is the biggest weakness of the tank, that its view range is 310 meters base. Oh, there are tier 2 tanks in the game that have higher view range than that, which means that even with coated optics and a fully upgraded crew, I was only able to get the view range of this vehicle up to about 370 or 380 meters. To put that into perspective, Most tier 8 and above tanks have that as their base view range before you take into account cruise skills. In many of my tier 8 light tanks, I can get up to about 490 meters view range with coated optics. This tank has a massive problem trying to spot its opponents at long range, and so that's what makes this vehicle balanced and means that it's not a pure light tank replacement. The amount of times that I was outspotted by light tanks, which prevented me from making large sweeping maneuvers or just allowed them to get easy shots into me or avoid me altogether, was happening in multiple occurrences in the first 40 games I've played in this vehicle. And for those of you who are thinking, well, you just put binoculars on the tank, right? Then the view range isn't going to be too bad. Well, Wargaming have one-upped us on this one. You cannot put binoculars on wheeled vehicles. Well, at least this wheeled vehicle. Wargaming is trying to do everything they can to ensure that these tanks are not new passive scouts. Even though in the right situation, they can do some passive scout role, the fact that they can't use binoculars means that they just can't get their view range up high enough to be able to spot even poorly camouflaged vehicles at mid to long ranges. Now, as the EBR-75 is going to be a premium vehicle, I'm sure a lot of you French light tank drivers are out there are going to be thinking, well, what kind of a crew setup does it have? Well, it actually has an additional crew member to other premium light tanks, such as the AMX 1357, which has a standard loadout of a commander, a gunner, and a driver. However, on the EBR, the commander is actually the loader, which is bizarre, because a lot of your radio operator skills that you'll be using on crews such as the AMX 13105 will not be useful. And that's because the EBR has a dedicated radio operator. And so if you're really keen to be able to get a head start in this tank right from the get-go when you get your hands on it, consider changing one of your already skilled crew members into the qualification of a loader for this tank, although that will cost you 500 gold. Alternatively, considering how many female tank crew members that Wargaming are giving to us, then consider recruiting one of them immediately to be the loader on the EBR, so you can fully prepare for the French wheeled light tanks. A passing mention should be made that Wargaming have actually got 3 new statistics inside the garage, specifically for wheeled vehicles. Number 1, maximum wheel turning angle, which is 25 degrees for this tank. And also the time it takes to switch to the rapid mode and the time it takes to switch to the cruise mode. So maybe this is going to be different for the other French wheeled light tanks coming relatively soon. Anyway, that's quite enough jibber jabber. Let's take the fastest tank in the game out onto the battlefield. Alright, so here we go, ladies and gents. There's going to be a lot to talk about, so I hope that you are all focused right now. Immediately, you're seeing the speedometer in the middle of your screen, and I've used my mouse button, or for you, you'll be using your X key to switch from cruise mode into rapid mode, which will up the speed limit of the tank to 80. Look on the map. My view range, my dynamic view range indicator doesn't even get up to the 445 spotting top, even though I pretty much have a fully pimped vehicle. Also, notice that I used auto aim there. The enhanced auto aim on this tank allows you to not actually have to click the tank, but click near the tank with your right mouse to be able to shoot it. So you can look elsewhere, because trust me, in these tanks you will need to. Okay, so I fired 2 APCR rounds at the Bulldog. Now I'm reloading high explosive rounds that are going to do more damage. 298, and I don't auto aim, sorry, I manually aim at the front of the bat chat to finish him off as well. Now what's this Tiger 2 coming down up above us? Alright, well, he's going to try and have a go at the Quacky baby. Oh buddy, doesn't look like it worked out too well. We used the enhanced auto aim feature there again, and you can see the special crosshair that tells you what you're auto aiming at. Looks like this guy really wanted to take me out. We're going to fire our high explosive rounds into his tracks there to lock him in place, and our team are going to finish him off momentarily. Come on. Okay. Oh, can I breathe now? There is so much to talk about when you're playing these vehicles. Really, it's just absolutely insane. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is they've actually turned off the rapid travel mode now to enter in the cruise mode, so my mobility is better. You see how much more agile and maneuverable this tank is. You're going to have to get used to changing between the rapid mode and the cruise mode for obviously when you need to use it. Now, one word of advice, and that is that whenever you switch between the cruise mode and the rapid mode, you usually lose about 10 to 15 kilometers, I guess, as the tank is lowering or raising the extra wheels actually on the side of the vehicle, which is just absolutely ridiculous. This whole tank, I'm so hyped for it. Let's just say it like that. Just wait for the end. I know a lot of you are going to be looking at it like, holy moly, did you just see how fast that vehicle was able to take an aggressive location, deal with 2 light tanks, and then bait a Tiger 2 into a stupid location? Is it going to be balanced? Well, more on that later on. Let's just focus on what the novel features of this tank are. And that is that you have to try and get into forward locations like this, because in a situation like this, I don't need 500 meters view range. But oh my word, we're doing something new again. Did you see that I held down my spacebar, I held down my W key until my engine fully charged up, and then I released it to be able to get a boost start. And so I'm driving around pretty much at 80 right from the get-go. But oh god, you better look where you're going and not looking at targets that you can manage to shoot. And so you can see we reversed there at about 50 kilometers an hour backwards to try and just dodge a few of the rounds. I was expecting the artillery or the T-20 to hit me there, or something hiding behind that rock like the E-25. But luckily, we reversed, we went forwards, and that must bring me on to another of the biggest weaknesses of these vehicles. To be able to turn left and right, imagine you're in a car right now. If you're in a car, the wheels of the car can't go on opposite ways. So you can't have one side of the car going forwards and one side of the car going backwards. That's one of the benefits of a tank. But let's just focus on, again, I'm doing the boost start right now. I'm holding it down, and look how quickly we're able to get up into 80. We take a round from the T-20. He snaps one into us before our sixth sense even goes off. We're going to aim at the Tiger II here. We're going to fire one at the Tiger II, fire another one at the Tiger II. We connect one shell, and now we're going to reload our 2 rounds. I'm looking for the artillery, and there you go. This was my prize for that boost start right into the enemy base. 1 into him, 2 into him. A bit of a misplay there as I allowed the T-28 to get me. But look at this. This is such an interesting moment. The P-43 is like, tasty wheeled light tank, I'm coming for you. The T-28's like, tasty wheeled light tank, I'm coming for you. So what do? Well, I just bomb it in rapid travel mode, put 1 into the T-20. I don't think he expected me to do that because I put a second one into him as well. And I'm ducking and weaving, and I managed to get out. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't able to do this immediately, but after 30 or 40 games in this vehicle, I started to become confident. And when I started to know what I was capable of in this tank, you start to take calculated risks. We went in, we distracted 2 tanks. They were sitting in this location, having defensive fire at my team as they were advancing in. We went in, we demolished the artillery, and we even get out while we're alive. The boost start in this tank is just absolutely ludicrous. You can't do it going backwards, but you can do it going forwards. But again, let me get back to my point about one of the balancing mechanics of these vehicles, and that is that you can't turn the wheels in separate directions. So in a tank, if you want to turn left or right, all you have to do is you have to basically hold your D key, and then your tank will turn. Because one side of the tracks, these ones are going to be going forwards if you want to turn right, and the other ones are going to be going backwards. And so can I do that? Oh, I don't think I could do it with my hands, but you get the point, and then the tank turns. However, in a wheeled vehicle, if you want to turn left, you either have to go forwards, or you have to kind of reverse and then go forwards that way. You have to do a 3-point turn, because that can make things incredibly awkward in these tanks. Get around the corner, enhanced auto-aim, bam bam, T-20 done, and then we're looking for the T-28 and the P-43. Just the speed. The aggression. What was that noise? Was that us going over the rubble there? Did you see that I just decided to stop and I'm actually driving backwards now? I know this looks a little weird. I almost need a special skin on this tank to remind me of what the reverse and what the front of the vehicle is. We're actually driving backwards towards the P-43. We baited him. We're right behind him now. I'm thinking about where he's going to try and shoot. And this is just, oh my god, I'm in love with this tank. I really am. But, again, I must highlight that, sure, this was a top-tier matchup, and we were engaging, was it some tier 6s? No, all tier 7s and tier 8s on the enemy team. But our actual result is not really that wild for a 6-minute slugfest. We didn't do that much spotting because of the poor view range of the vehicle. Our damage was great, but not really completely exceptional. But boy, did I have a lot of fun in this game. Alright, so next up we're in Siegfried Line, and instantly we activate our rapid travel mode because there is a big old field to be able to cover. Now, when you're playing these kind of tanks, you can make aggressive lines of engagement that other light tanks simply can't. Of course, if I was in a light tank, I'd probably be thinking more about going this way, safer into a location like this. However, in this vehicle, I feel like you need to be more aggressive because your view range is less, so I've just decided to try and cut off the enemy light tank. I'm expecting the LTTB to appear right in front of me, and there he is, the LTTB appears, but I'm not actually the one who spotted him. I couldn't see the LTTB even though he's about 300 meters away from me. I spotted the T10, and I see a Scorpion G at the back of the map, and I nearly flipped my tank, but not quite. Do you notice how close we have to get to our opponents to be able to see them? Right now we put 1 into the Scorpion, 2 into the Scorpion, and we reload high explosive rounds, hoping to be able to finish him off here, and he is just caught right out. And that is one of the best things about this tank, that you can use it to make aggressive plays, to take on artillery, and to take on those sneaky tank destroyers that like to hide at the back of the map. You know how many Scorpion Gs, you know how many SU-130 PMs there are in the game right now. Well, this vehicle, or should I say, these kinds of vehicles, the wheeled vehicles, if they go into the game as they are in Wargaming, keep it as what it is, which I'm pretty sure they are. I mean, I feel like these are more or less, obviously everything's subject to change, we've got to remember that, but I feel like these are starting to get more towards the final stats of the tank. So we actually hit the Conqueror's gun there, however the next one goes right into the side of the IS-3A. And what we're doing right now is I'm just playing the sniping role. Because remember, I'm going to get outspotted even by medium tanks on the enemy team. And so if I'm going to get outspotted by medium tanks on the enemy team, I can't really make the risky plays. I have to go close enough so that when I fire, that they're also going to be able to shoot me. Now, if I was playing a stereotypical light tank right now, you know, I'd have about 480 meters view range. What I would do is I would probably be more like... more like over here, and I would go forwards, I would spot the T-28, and then I would fall back where I knew that he wasn't going to be able to shoot me or to spot me, and then I would fire at him. However, in this vehicle, you need to make use of bushes. You need to use trees. What you do is you go forwards, you spot through the tree or just by the side of the tree. And that was a heat round into the side of the T-28 there, and now I'm going to be reloading a standard round. So what you do is you go forwards, and T-110E5 just manages to damage my vehicle, but I repair it, and so I keep my tank mobile. And I've actually outside the travel mode here, or the rapid mode, whatever you want to be calling it, and I went into cruise mode to try and get the extra mobility of the tank, or shall I say the traverse speed of the vehicle. Because when you're up on the pillbox, you really want to leave the rapid travel mode, otherwise you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Right into the side of the Conqueror turret there, and I just want to show you from this game what this tank's sniping capacity is like. It's great. The problem is right now is I'm not spotting any of these vehicles, and so really this is just a fortunate situation to find yourself in this tank. The fact that we've got a Conqueror who's sitting hull down, who's actually spotting for us. How weird is it that you've got tanks actually spotting for you when you play these things? Alright, so we put one into the LTTB, but he uses that little hidey hole behind that, I think the barrier there to be able to avoid our shell, and we bounce an APCR shell off the front of that well-armored Tier 8 Soviet light tank, and so we're going to reload a heat round. We're going to see if we can manage to get him. He puts one into us. He gets a bit confident here. We put one heat round into the top of his plate. Now we can reload standard rounds. So we're not really doing much spotting here. If I was playing in a light tank, I'd really feel like I'd be lighting up more of the enemy vehicles and spotting them for my team. However, this vehicle's a bit of a weirdo. It's a bit of a freak, really. It's kind of a super freak of a tank. It can do this sniping role to be able to support your allies at mid to long range, even when it has no hope of being able to spot them. But then, after the sniping is done, it's got this mobility to really start to go and put the pressure up on the enemy team, and that is to try and find this Object 263 who's going to be camping at the back of the map, and to be able to bomb it around at 80. And I think I'm driving backwards again. I'm always driving backwards in this tank. Am I driving backwards or forwards right now? Actually, that looks like it could be forwards. Yeah, it's probably forwards. And then we find the Object 263. We put one into his tracks. Do we lock his tracks down? Now we do. And we're going to reload some high explosive rounds here, because I was thinking that if I got right up alongside the vehicle and I shot between the tracks, that I could probably manage to penetrate him here. And looks like we do, actually. Well, we won't know for sure because we did 88. Now we're going to put one into the back of the AMX. We are. That one doesn't penetrate. And notice how much we're slowed right now. We've just lost 2 wheels. 2 wheels are damaged. You can see that they're wobbly, and we were limited to 30 kilometers an hour. If you have 2 wheels damaged in this tank, your speed gets halved from what it would be in cruise mode, and that is incredibly frustrating. You can't turn quickly, and to be limited down to 30 kilometers an hour, you really can't use your evasive maneuvers, and then you're a complete sitting duck. Now, of course, as long as you've got the repair kit, you can dab the 4 key for me, but I recommend you put your repair kits on your 5 key so you can press 5-5 with a small repair kit for your tracks, and then instantly they're recovered and you can get back up to full speed. But do keep that in mind, that as far as I can tell with the French wheeled vehicles, that if you lose 1 wheel, then you're pretty much okay. 2, your top speed gets halved and your mobility is drastically affected. And if you lose 3, I think my speed went down to about 15 or 20 kilometers an hour. And all you can really do is coast and use the momentum that you had. Okay, so now I want to show you another kind of duel that we had on Siegfried Line. And I'm playing against a Bat Chatillon 12T. So immediately I make my way towards the middle of the map, where I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to spot him, and he's definitely going to spot me. Now, if you don't really try to get close to the enemy light tank, and really surprise them with where you're going to be positioned, then all that's going to happen is they're going to spot you and you're not going to see them, and that's incredibly awkward. Alright, so we tried to fire some APCR shells at the Bat Chat, however we're unable to really connect anything, but I reload HE, and now, knowing where he's camping, I'm going to slowly make my way back inside the cruise mode in this tank to be able to spot him, and I'm going to pull back in front of the bush, put 1 in, put 2 in, 507 damage, and I don't even get spotted, ladies and gents. He thinks, oh, I'm absolutely stuck right now, and so he's going to make his way through towards the mid-ridge here, and I just feel like I've got this. We're going to use a boost mode to be able to get away from this ridgeline quickly before he proxy spots us, and I just decided, sometimes, when you're playing probably the most fun tank in the game, you've got to just play for fun as well, right? So we're going to leap over this ridge, auto-aim at the guy, finish him off, turn the vehicle around, and then, yeah, we're going to do the same thing back again. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm lost for words. I'm just completely lost for words. The possibility of just absolutely crazy epic moments in these tanks. Now, in the interest of not just showing the highlights and the absolutely epic and fun moments that I've had in the EBR-75, I want to show you some of the realities. And that is that when you end up on the losing team and how frustrating it can be when you just don't have decent view range. Alright, so I'm going to skip out on the first 4 minutes of this battle. Basically, I went over into the bush location at E1. I tried to spot out. None of the enemy advanced. My team all hung around this location. I didn't have deep vision to be able to spot the mediums. And I didn't really have the gun performance to challenge the fronts of their tanks, even with application of heat rounds. So I've decided to use the mobility of the vehicle to instead try and push the east location because all of my tank destroyers seem to want to sit back here anyway. Now, I've pushed forwards here, and I thought I got spotted by the WT Alpha Panzer IV and put 1 high explosive round in and 2 high explosive rounds in. And we're really starting to chunk down that German not the light tank, the German tank destroyer. Now we're going to reload again, and are we going to be able to finish him off? We can't quite see him because our view range was awful, so we didn't keep spotting him, and even the LT-432 didn't quite manage to spot him. So I knew that something fishy was going on, and considering I got spotted, well, it's quite clear where the LT-432 on the enemy team is. So I pinged the map, I let my LT-432 on my team let him know where he's going to be, and now I decide to try and push over and try and punish him. But unfortunately, I've got these high explosive rounds loaded, and whether I'm going to be able to penetrate a fairly well-armored Soviet light tank with 75mm of high explosive penetration is another question altogether. So I'm waiting for him to pop up, and now I've got the ambush on him. Now I'm in the bush. I can see the reticle goes green. He pulls back. I fire 1 to his tracks, 2 into his tracks. I've locked him in place, and I request fire against him, but it's too late. The WT Alpha Panzer IV managed to shut down our LT-432. So now I don't really have any support. So what can I do? I guess I could hang around in this ridge and wait for them to advance, and then maybe my tank destroyers are going to be able to get some shots in them finally from the back. But I'm just not doing any spotting this game because my view range is so poor that unless you get onto a map where you can try and create a short-range engagement, it's not going to work out. So instead, I decide to try and do something glorious. I'm going to try and flank around. I'm going to try and take out the WT Alpha Panzer IV. Then I'm going to try and take on the artillery. And then everything should be good, right? Yeah, but there's just one problem. The LT-432 on the enemy team has real light tank view range, and I can't see that fun. So even though he shoots me, he's shooting at me multiple times, and I can't even see where I'm getting shot from right now. I lose one of my wheels, but luckily when one is damaged, it's not the end of the world. And he hits me again, 2 wheels down now. My mobility is massively reduced, so I repair my tracks. Sorry, not my tracks, my wheels, and instantly, look, he's down on me. I leave the rapid mode of this vehicle, and now I use travel mode. And one thing that's quite hilarious is, like, this guy, if I really wanted, he just can't catch me now. So a light tank just can't catch this vehicle. I have to admit, later on, he does manage to hit one of my... Well, I'll just show it to you. He hits one of my wheels, and look, now I can't actually repair, and so my vehicle is much, much slower, and so having the tracks makes him much more mobile. So it's absolutely deadly when you get hit in one of the wheels of this thing because it does slow you down. However, if I played a little bit better there and I was more used to the mobility of the tank, then I could have probably been able to evade even one of the fastest light tanks in the game around a building like that. So you just imagine what you can do against a heavy tank, even when they're turning their turret and their tracks together in the correct direction at the same time to amplify their effective traverse. You can still outmaneuver them. So I got this tank yesterday, and I was so darn excited to play it that I I actually played it for 46 games straight. I can't remember a time when I played 46 games of the same tank again and again and again and again. And while I felt like I was playing pretty okay in the tank, I have to admit, it's quite funny that my statistics of this vehicle have ended up being very similar to that of another Tier 8 French premium light tank like the ELC Even 90. Of course, it doesn't have any of the wheeled mechanics that I've just shown off in this video. But look, my damage was slightly higher at 1,468 compared to 1,334. My experience was pretty much 1,000 for both of these tanks on average in each one of the games, and I win 61% of my games in each of these two vehicles. And look how close my assistance damage is as well. 1,221 average in the EBR and 1,234 average in the Even 90. I'm spotting between 3 and 4 tanks per game, and I'm getting slightly more kills in the EBR, which I can definitely attribute to the vehicle's enhanced sniping capacity. But all in all, things are eerily similar. So my initial impressions about this vehicle is that, well, it does have a high skill cap, and I'm definitely going to have to learn the intricate details of it, and hopefully I'm going to get better and better playing new wheeled vehicles. I don't see this tank specifically as being some kind of new overpowered mechanic, and everybody's going to have to go out and buy this tank because everything else now sucks. That's definitely not the case. I would think that I'm far more dominant in my LT432, for example. I win 74% of my games and I deal 1,700 average damage in this tank. And I'm actually spotting more as well. I'm doing 1,432 spotting on average in this vehicle. So that's 3k combined compared to the EBR, which I'm doing much less damage, I'm doing much less spotting, and my win ratio is suffering because of that. And that comes down to the fact that this tank just doesn't have the view range. It doesn't have the view range to be outrageously overpowered, to spot everything at long range, to avoid those tanks, to be able to make pushes where it feels safe. Whenever you push, you feel like you're living on the edge. You feel like your life is always at risk because you can't outspot everything else. And the fact that Wargaming don't allow you to use binoculars in this tank means that it's not some kind of overpowered new passive scout. And so all in all, and while remember, these are my first day impressions of the tank. I've played 46 games in it. I think it's fairly balanced. But one thing's for sure, is it's really fun. Now, of course, there are going to be some players out there who will just love artillery, and some players out there who just absolutely love playing sneaky tank destroyers, glass cannons that sit at the back of the map. These are going to be your nightmare, ladies and gents, let me tell you. These things can get through your lines, use its magazine to kill you, and possibly even get out before your team have had a chance to be able to get back to protect you. And so maybe wheeled vehicles are actually going to be the solution to the artillery problem that a lot of players feel that there is in the game right now. Artillery are going to have to be a lot safer. They're going to have to not risk going out into the field of Paris, sitting at the back of the map and thinking, they're going to die before they manage to get to me. I don't think that's going to be the case. An EBR with a boost mode is going to be able to cross the Paris Valley, well, not valley, really, the field, past the Eiffel Tower, find that artillery and get out. And so I must commend Wargaming for introducing just a whole new type of tank and a whole new feeling of playing World of Tanks into the game 8 years into its release. I think this tank is also going to have quite a high skill cap, and I think some people who purchase this vehicle, well, they're going to have fun. I really don't think they're going to be influential in the battle. And if you were a light tank driver out there who were worried that the new wheeled light tanks were going to completely replace your tank class, nah, it's not going to be the case either. To be honest, I think you've got more to worry about from medium tanks with ultra-high view range just poaching you on ridge lines than you do about wheeled light tanks. And so there you have it, ladies and gents. That is my review of the Panhard EBR. And consequently, I'm really hopeful for the new French wheeled light tanks coming relatively soon. And if you haven't done so already, ladies and gents, make sure you check the accelerated crew training in your ELC AMX, because it's very likely that the wheeled vehicles are going to come out from here. So if you want to get them as soon as they do come out, then you want to start preparing now. Probably save up about 30,000 experience. I think that should be enough. Anyway, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful for you. If it was, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about the wheeled vehicles, and especially the Panhard EBR. Do you think that the vehicle looks absolutely crazy overpowered? Do you think that it looks just about right? Do you think that it looks actually underpowered? Are you excited about the prospect of wheeled light tanks going into the game? Or do they all look a little bit too fast for you? It might affect the speed of the game and change World of Tanks forever, at least in a negative way, in your opinion. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hope
defend our zone until the time runs out.
Yeah, he goes on a bit. Hey everyone, it's Quickie Baby, and welcome back to World of Tanks, and you are checking out my first ever game of Frontline on my Plays for Free account. So as you all know, I started a second account last year to try and get back into touch what it's like to play this game truly for free, and then recently I undertook a challenge from you guys, my community, which was instigated by Kevin Wang, to do the French Wheeled Marathon. And during the journey I thought, what kind of vehicle do I really want to go for first at tier 8? And I thought Pantera. Why wouldn't I want to get an auto-loading Italian medium tank? And then I realized I've got an auto-reloading Italian medium tank. I've also got an EBR 75. Holy moly, that's like the match made in heaven for having Frontline, right? So, free to play Frontline, although with a lot of time invested. Let's check it out and see what we're able to achieve. And this is the very first game I've played in, so I don't have all of the luxuries that you might be accustomed to, having Inspire, having max rank engineering. I've literally got level 1 engineering throughout. Alright, so one of the things that I've been really enjoying about playing Frontline this week, we're now in episode 2, is that I figured out, holy moly, this game mode is actually really fun with friends. And yesterday I was playing with my good buddies Phil and M4, they're also moderators inside my Twitch channel, if you've seen them around, and we are in 3 Italian medium tanks, and look at this synergy right now. Linking up, we're advancing through the front, we shut down the Progetto on the enemy team, and we're literally talking through our reloads there, and we get out quite a tricky situation. But look at that, the momentum and the synergy that we have as a 3-person group. Now, I've been making my plays in Frontline as just a solo player, and I've just realized if you do manage to get some coordination going in Frontlines with a group of 2 or 3, you can be absolutely hugely influential in swaying the battle in your team's favor, or at least winning fronts at least. Now, of course, you can't win all fronts. It's not like a regular battle of World of Tanks when you can lock down the cap circle and that's it for the enemy team, right? That's not the case here. You're going to have to try and win on all 3 fronts, and unless you split your platoon up, that's just not going to be possible unless your team is exceptional on the other front and you try to target the weakest front. Now, of course, how do I recommend targeting the weakest front? Well, if you press your tab key, you can actually see how many enemy tanks there are on the front. And as we just went in and we absolutely obliterated the enemy team, they're probably not going to hang around here for very long. And as you can see, slowly but surely, the players who have died on the enemy team are leaving this front. At least a couple of them have already, or maybe a couple of players have joined our front. I'm not 100% certain. But eventually, more and more players are going to leave, and the worst thing that you can probably do is just to leave your whole platoon on the same front when there's nothing left to do. That's really not a very good idea. So what I tell Phil and M4 right now is, look, this front is dead. There's nothing we can really add to it. Some of the players on the enemy team don't have any tanks that they can even spawn in. And I want to also play quite cautiously, because obviously I've only got 2 tier 8 vehicles on this account. I managed to pick up a rental of the T44 Frontline Edition, and I can't believe that if you purchase that thing even with 240,000 credits to rent it for a week, that you don't even get it with a 100% crew. It comes with a 75% crew. That's just absolutely awful. It's not even a reward tank, I don't think, although I'm going to check later on today. And so you can't even use your Soviet medium tank crews from maybe your T-43 or your T-34-85 or any of the vehicles inside it as well. So it's crazy, in my opinion, why Wargaming are kind of preventing people from being able to get into Frontline and being comfortable. I'm not saying that it has to be a premium tank, the T-44 Frontline Edition, but why not at least make it a reward vehicle so that you can use your crews in it without penalty and having to play around with a 75% crew. Alright, so this is why I love the Pantera. It's actually got really good accuracy at long range, and while you don't really want to go too deep in the magazine, because the more that you fire, the more that you lower your damage per minute, and your reload gets longer and longer, the deeper you go into the magazine, it's just absolutely awesome to be able to dump in 720 damage on your opponents. Oh my word, I always get nervous going over these bridges. I think they're my bane. And so as you can see, the front that we left, we were outnumbering the enemy, and they're not going to push through into the C cap. And so me, Phil, and M4 have decided to move to B instead to try and get a flanking position out on our opponents. And we've already lowered the health of the Scorpion. Now hopefully we can get behind this big glut of tanks there. And that's really what I recommend that you do if you're playing in a platoon with your friends. Is it's not enough to just sit on one front. If you've managed to decimate the enemy and they've gone to the other fronts because they don't want to spawn again to be killed by you, then definitely look to move to other fronts to be able to stop them from losing out as well. Because obviously the goal is to try and defend all 3 fronts, right? And you can't do that by just remaining on one. Alright, so this T-92 is going... Watch this. This is actually quite funny. So we fire one blind. I thought he was going to go forwards. He didn't. I'm thinking about firing the second blind, but I realized, no, I kind of want to keep my DPM. You'll see that I wait for the shell to actually go back in, something you have to do in your Italian auto reloaders if you want to maintain effective damage on your opponents. Because if you fire with 0.1 seconds left on the reload, that shell doesn't actually get loaded into the tank, and yet you fire the backup one. And so you can lose literally an entire reload if you fire a fraction of a second too early. One thing that's a bit annoying for me as well, I'm not sure if any of you have figured this out, is that the audio tells of the actual, you can hear the shell being loaded into the breach, are just a little too early. Obviously they make sense because the shell would go in and you'd hear the friction between the two surfaces of the shell and the gun barrel, but or the breach. But it's just so annoying if you try and depend on that to know, okay, now it's time to fire, and then you find out you fired too early, so don't make that mistake. Alright, now this is just the best situation to find yourself in front line, right? Defending a cap circle and having multiple opponents to shoot at. But I didn't think this IS-4 was going to be going for me. Now I fire one at him, and I'm going to try and fire a second in, but he's angled his armor enough to be able to bounce my shot. Luckily, Phil and M4 have arrived, and one of them are inspiring. And when you get the Inspire buff inside World of Tanks for a platoon, that's just phenomenal, especially an Italian auto-reloading platoon. You're now kind of having really good single target DPM if you choose to use that, and it doesn't even feel so bad going deeper into the magazine. One thing as well that a lot of people don't think about Inspire is that it increases your view range massively, and so that actually allows you to be able to spot your opponents at very decent distances, especially if you're playing French-wheeled light tanks. Now everybody knows that the problem with the French-wheeled light tanks is they can't use binoculars, and while they can use coated optics, at least with regards to the Lynx and the EBR-75 that you will be playing in frontline, their base view range is, I think, 310. And no matter how hard you try, even if you're willing to use premium consumables and you've got a 7-skill crew with situational awareness, brothers in arms, and recon, you're still not going to get that view range up above about 400. And so that Inspire can make huge plays for French-wheeled light tanks, allowing you to, when you get into the open, for example, make a huge sweeping play against your opponents and light up a lot of their tanks. And then, of course, you're going to be able to reload faster, and even that Inspire can make you more accurate in a Lorraine 40T or an AMX 5100, for example. Use it just before you're about to unload a full magazine because you've caught somebody out in the open. You're going to be more accurate, and then afterwards, because your loader has increased crew skill and your commander's been boosted up a little bit, sometimes the radio operator is actually the loader on your French auto-loading tanks, and then you're going to be able to reload faster to be able to go after them. Now you'll notice that I came around that corner so confidently against this Samoa SM, and that is because he made a huge mistake. Don't do what he did. And that is that he didn't hold down his right mouse button when he turned his tank around. It's one of the most stupid things that you can do, to look behind you but not lock your turret in place. Because here's the thing, unless somebody's been counting your shells when you're playing in an autoloader, then they're not really going to know for sure if you've got another one, right? But it's a pretty telltale sign that somebody is not interested in shooting you if they don't hold their right mouse button down, they turn their camera around, and their turret starts to traverse away from you, right? Yeah, that's not really going to work out too well, is it? And so I saw that, and then so I felt confident that we can probably get the Samoa and be able to push him. Alright, so we die. But again, me, Phil, and M4 are actually doing a great job of just locking down all the fronts. We stopped the enemies from pushing into E there, but once we left C, they actually managed to take C. So I've decided to respawn away from my buds, because unfortunately I was the only one to die there. You can see they're still alive in their Pantera and their Progetto, respectively. And I'm going to play the EBR. Now, while I do have Brothers in Arms on this vehicle, I don't even think that I have Sixth Sense at the moment. Oh no, wait a minute, maybe I do, because I think I might have a female commander. I'm not 100% certain, we'll find out in a second. But my crew are not exceptionally skilled. I don't even have maximum concealment on this vehicle. I think it's about 50%. And if I just zoom in on the minimap here, take a look at how bad our view range is in this vehicle. This is a tier 8 light tank. It probably is packing about 370, maybe 360 meters view range right now. That's absolutely horrific. And if you're not spotting for yourself, then that means that you're only getting 50% of the experience against your opponents. And when you're trying to push up the ranks and you want to be that first captain, or you want to be the major, or you want to be the general, well, it's not going to work out too well for you. Now we put one into the back of that Pantera there, setting him on fire. And what I want to do is basically just try and keep harassing. Now, I did play the Lynx quite a lot inside the first episode of Frontline last month, and while I thought the Lynx is a great vehicle with a nice single-shot 90mm gun and very impressive high explosive rounds with 90mm of penetration and 320 alpha damage, I have to admit, the EBR-75, for me, it just feels like the superior vehicle. Being able to go backwards faster and having this 2-round magazine just suits the bursty combat. You see how we can put in 2 shots against the SU before he realizes and he starts to aim at us. With the Lynx, for example, you could only put 1 shot in, and there's no hope in hell with the bad reload that the vehicle has and the poor DPM that you're going to be able to sit there for long enough to be able to put the second in without them hitting you in return, or at least having a chance to hit you. But being able to unload 2 75mm shells within 1.5 seconds of each other on this tank just feels absolutely incredible. And the fact that the alpha damage is 175 means that you're still doing 350 damage with that 2-round burst. That's very, very, very brutal. Also, the high explosive rounds on this vehicle, while they're not quite as good as the Lynx, they're still packing 260 damage, and the fact that you can fire 2 of them means that you have a 520 high explosive burst against lightly armored targets. But although you do have 75mm of penetration, which is worse than the 90mm that the Lynx has. One word of advice, and actually I'm going to bring up Wargaming's website for this because they just actually released a fantastic article about Frontline. And I want to talk to you about this with regards to the high explosive rounds as well that you're going to be using, is that if you're targeting the back of the enemy objectives, let me show you. There are actually weak points on the back of the gun turrets that Wargaming is showing here. Let me move this over a little bit so you can still see the combat. This yellow door hatch behind the objective is actually 70mm thick. And now, while I was able to successfully go through that with my Lynx's high explosive rounds, very reliably because it's 90mm of penetration, I actually found that the EBR-75 and its 75mm of high explosive penetration was insufficient for going through the door. And just today I learned somebody on the stream was telling me, oh, why don't you shoot the vents instead? And they're completely right. Apparently there are ventilation shafts here, here, and here on the back of these emplacement turrets that you can shoot that only have 25mm of armor. And so you're easily going to be able to penetrate those even with very low caliber high explosive rounds, even on something like a Progetto or in any of your generic medium tanks. Maybe you're playing in a Pershing. Just load HE and shoot at those vents. But of course you're going to have to be able to sit still and aim accurately in close proximity to them to be able to penetrate. That will allow you to be able to pick up tons of damage on the back of the enemy objectives. Alright, so let's see how this battle is going. Well, I've linked up finally with M4 again. I think M4 just died for the first time. He is on 8 kills right now. Phil is on 7, and I am only on 2. Although that is 2 kills with 3,500 damage and 2,000 spotting, so maybe I've just not been very good at kill securing. Alright, so I let M4 know that I really don't want to die right now, so I'm actually going to pull back and try and flank around and get towards the repair depot. I can't really help him against the IS-3 and all the heavy tanks that are pushing in there. When I don't possibly have my Pantera to load back into at this moment, you've really got to be very, very careful. I had to play so much safer on my free-to-play account than I could on my pay-to-win account, or my main account, whatever you want to be calling it. Yeah, pay-to-win account? Oh gosh, we'll go there. Yeah, okay, whatever. Let's not focus on it. But it is when you think about it. But I tell you what, you guys judge whether this free-to-play account is really holding me back as much as I thought. And as long as you invest your time wisely into the right vehicles and you still know about how to play, you can be very, very successful. And in fact, it looks like we might be one of the first captains on the team, along with my buds, M4 and Phil. Good stuff. So this is actually a wonderful moment of the game when we are picking up a lot of spotting. Look at that, we were lighting up all of those targets, and I've got a gun line here that are nailing them for me. And spotting inside World of Tanks is blooming useful. If you can manage to get into a good position, then you're still going to be getting 50% of the experience that the player... Well, you're going to be getting the same experience as the person who deals the damage. Because, of course, if you're spotting, you're getting half of the experience that they would have been getting if they're not spotting the target themselves. And so while you're probably going to have to get something like, well, obviously you have to get like 10,000 spotting for the equivalent of 5,000 damage on targets that you can see, it can be quite a lot easier to pick up spotting against multiple targets if you've got a big gun line. Alright, so the enemy team are now going to be pushing into the ECAP circle, and this is without a doubt the most important position to be in inside front line. I'm not talking about this tiny little location, although I think it's very good for defending the ECAP over here. It's more about interrupting enemy tanks as they enter the cap circle, and the easiest way for you to be able to go and successfully get higher ranks inside front line is to defend and attack the cap circles. Now, how does the decapping work inside front line? Well, the person who actually gets the kill is the person who gets all of the base reset points. However, if you damage somebody, it actually blocks them for, depending on what your engineering level is, a set number of time, and you will be getting all of the decap points that person was unable to achieve because you blocked their ability to cap. And as you can see, we've just pretty much got halfway through the captain rank with that tiny little bit of damage there against the Type, the WZ, and the Emil. But it's because we were doing the base defense points that we were really able to be successful. Alright, so this was one of my favorite moments in the battle, and that's because Phil, so I was just wondering if it was Phil or it was M4 inside the EBR, but I realized M4 doesn't quite have an EBR, and even though I offered to get him one, he says he doesn't want one. Talk about gift horse, right, ladies and gents? But Phil is lighting up these Progettos and is allowing me to engage at long range. And remember, in a vehicle like this, it's completely awkward to be able to shoot your opponents, because when your view range is so bad and a Progetto's is so long, that means that if you can see them, they are very much likely to be able to see you. And so, if you can work with one of your allies, of course, if they don't fire, if they're spotting and they're not firing, so they maintain their camo, and the other one of you just shoots, then at a longer range, that means you can actually engage people inside these vehicles without the chance of them returning their rounds. Alright, so we're a few shells away from Major in this game now, and while we don't have the most kills, with M4 out-killing me by a ratio of 2-1 and Phil nearly the same, I'm starting to feel like, is there a tiny chance that we might actually be able to get General in our first ever game of Frontline on a completely free-to-play account that I haven't spent a penny on, and without having all of the advantages of having Inspire, having full-level engineering. I literally only have level 1 engineering right now. And it's more about the culmination of course, if this had actually been my first game of Frontline, I wouldn't stand a chance. I'd probably be driving around going, oh god, what is this? What am I meant to do? Oh, shall I go over there? Where shall I go next? But I've played probably about 100 battles of Frontline now. But to be able to take what I've learnt and then apply it to this complete free-to-play account, although I am using a vehicle which, unless you had 60 hours to be able to grind for, you would have had to have spent a little bit of money on. Hopefully I'm going to be able to portray the tips and tricks that I've learnt, that all of you will then be able to replicate, to hopefully be able to get some decent ranks as well. And there we go, Major in this battle. And it looks like there's at least 4 minutes left on it. Alright, so I'm going to try and track this Lorraine, and while I do a little bit of tracking damage to the Lorraine, I'm unable to be able to do as much as I need to be able to take the guy's track off. And then I did not realize, but there's a Progetto and a T-54 gunning me right now, and I end up against another Progetto, and I'm just hoping that maybe I can escape this death trap that I've got myself into, and oh, shut down. Well, a bit of poor tunnel vision there by me. I didn't realize what kind of a tricky situation I was going to get myself into. And the fact that I stopped and engaged that Lorraine. I was going for those tracking shots, but that was the first real poor play of this front line. And yeah, while you can get lucky and sometimes evade all of that damage inside your EBR, yeah, sometimes you are going to get shut down. But nevertheless, I get to spawn in the Pantera. Alright, so let's talk about this stage of the game when you are trying to defend your objectives, and the enemy team have managed to pretty much push through all of the fronts. Well, at this stage, it's all about damage limitation. There's no way for you to stop them from taking all of the objectives, or shall I say at least 1 or 2 of them. But remember, you only have to defend 3. They need to kill 3, so as long as you protect 3, and they can have 2 for all of you care, then you're still going to be able to win the battle. And so the enemy have actually made a fantastic play to push through and take 4, which actually is right in the middle. Usually they're going to start from the flanks and take 1 or 5 and then push their way in. But the fact that they've taken 4 so aggressively now leaves us wide open. we have to defend at least 2, right? And we have to defend 3. There's no way we're going to be able to defend 1, so it's all about focusing on what you can actually defend. 1 is gone, so I wanted to make sure that I made my way over towards 2. 3 is very hard for the enemy to be able to get their hands on, because 3 is actually on top of a hill, and for them to be able to get up there, it takes them a while, but more importantly, it's a lot easier to defend a hilltop against an enemy advance, although in World of Tanks with gun depression and going hold down with the turrets doesn't really quite work out like that when I think about it. I still feel like 3 is one of the safest objectives. And so that meant that I had to really focus on 2. And now what I'm going to do is get behind this Carnarvon. I'm going to aim for the back of the tank. I'm going to track him, so if my team damage him, we'll get a few extra points. And there you go. Wham, bam, Carnarvon taken down. Nearly up to 10,000 damage here, although it certainly has been a very long battle. Alright, now we've got 2 pretty much completely safe, although it looks like it is taking a little bit of damage, maybe from a little bit of collateral fire. But now what we can hopefully do is just stop the enemy team from advancing from 1 till 2. But what I realize at this moment is that while I'm enjoying this moment, look how many tanks we have. This is ridiculous, right? We don't need to be here, and you can see it clicks in my mind at that time. Don't just go into a blob. You can see that all of these little lemmings are chasing after this M4190 as if they're bees flocking towards some pollen. Obviously, bees are the ones that make the honey. They're not going to flock towards honey. Anyway, just WZ132. Hopefully we get to ram him, but not quite. I'm a little bit sad about that because I'm halfway through Major and we've got 4 minutes left now to get towards General. But with only 3 objectives left now, it's going to be a close run if we're going to be able to take this one down. So anyway, don't be a muppet. Don't stay on a flank that's already run. The fact that all of those guys over there are doing what they're doing on this location is just a waste of time. Obviously, the enemies are pushing in here. They're coming in from the E-cap, which they just took, and they're going to make their way towards 3 and 5. And so if we want to win this battle, we have to defend both 3 and 5, and hopefully we're going to be able to stop the enemy's advance. So I'm telling Phil, I'm telling M4, let's go get together and see if we can do this, buds. And I quickly realized just how many tanks are advancing at us. It's pretty much about 10 vehicles on their way up towards the hill. And yeah, while the Pantera is a great vehicle, it doesn't really have the DPM to be able to vanquish everybody very, very quickly. Alright, so unfortunately we're not going to get anything done if we miss our first shot, right? And actually, do you see how I fire a little too early there? And so I actually interrupt the reload, and so I don't have 2 shells loaded. Oh, that's a bit horrific. Okay, anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's focus on this LT-432. And you'll notice that I don't actually fire because I want to fully load my gun and start my damage rotation. In a vehicle like this, if you fire out all of your shells, then you're never going to be able to stop multiple opponents from taking you on. You have to fire them one by one to maximize your DPM. Although if you have an opportunity to secure a kill, do it. It's not the end of the world if you fire the second. And to be honest, in the Pantera, unlike the Progetto, it's actually got a very good reload for its third. So we've got an IS-3A approaching M4 from behind, so I decide to push through the front. And I'm going to give myself as long as I can to be able to reload, but oh no, the enemies have actually taken the objective. But the game isn't ending. And so I decide to ram the Progetto, and look how close we are to the general rank. Come on, baby. Yes! The final little bit of a ram against the Progetto secures the general rank for myself, which was the first on my team, and I could not have been happier. Now, why is the game going on? You can see I raised my gun in victory. The very first game that I play in on my Plays for Free account, I do get general, but of course I could not have even got close to doing this without my good buddies Phil and M4. But you're wondering, why did the game go on so long after the objectives have been killed? And that's because there's, although I've talked about this on the channel before, there's something that maybe a few of you didn't know. And that is that every time a vehicle is killed after a base is capped, or the objectives are killed, as it works in the same way, it actually extends the duration of the game by 5 seconds. And so if you can keep linking in kills, the game could go on, not indefinitely, but for as long as there are still vehicles to be able to take out. So quite a performance from our platoon here, and that means that we get some kind of special medal for when you get over 20 kills between you. We actually managed to pick up 26 this battle. And while the gross earnings are 133,000 for this battle, after all the repairs, we only received 85 5,000 credits. Of course, without a premium account, but if we had been using one, that would be 151. That's pretty much double the amount of credits that you would receive, because obviously it's not any cheaper to fire ammunition and repair tanks without a premium account. And so your base costs are the same with or without, which means that your net profit will be substantially higher than the 50% raw credit income. One thing I was quite happy with, however, is 5,256 experience is very decent. This battle lasted just under half an hour, and even if I'd been playing pretty well, it would have taken me at least an hour to be able to get that without a premium account by playing in the random queue. But of course, all of that really comes down to the fact that we were able to secure the general rank with the RAM at the end, which pretty much boosts the amount of experience we get by about 100%. And so I really want to highlight several things with this video. Number one, yeah, it's perfectly possible to dominate the game without having all of the advantages that you can get inside Frontline. You don't have to have 5 crew skills. You don't have to be slinging premium rounds with premium consumables. You can even play standard tech tree vehicles. And while having tanks like the Progetto or the EBR-75 or the Lorraine will definitely be an advantage, they're by no means a necessity. Through active defense of the cap circles, putting yourself on the right fronts where there are the most enemy tanks to be able to shut down, reading the map and making preemptive play rather than reactive play. It will allow you to rack up lots of experience, which will give you increased rewards. So my recommendations for free-to-play vehicles to be able to get your hands on to dominate in Frontline would be number one, Pantera. The Pantera with an auto reloader is just so incredibly flexible. It can play the single shot tank if the situation allows it to, but also just unload its magazine if the situation demands it, and you absolutely have to just get that 700 damage out, and then you're going to have about 30 seconds to be able to reload. It's phenomenal for that. Next up, I really think that the Lynx is a great vehicle, and while I don't think it's as strong as the EBR-75, because the EBR-75 can go slightly faster backwards and it has that kind of bursty autoloader, the Lynx, with careful use of its high explosive rounds with 90mm of penetration, 320 alpha damage, can be absolutely devastating. And if you can get yourself engineering on a vehicle like that, you can quite often push an enemy cap circle or even defend your own by simply being in it and making a rush around enemy vehicles and interrupting them with your high explosive rounds, which will give you huge amounts of ranks. On the other hand, if French-wheeled light tanks aren't your thing, you really can't go wrong with something like a 5100. The AMX 5100 is all about planning the perfect ambush, and what more do you need than 1,800 damage in a single magazine? That's enough to kill an entire vehicle inside the cap circle, or hopefully multiple vehicles that started on reduced hit points. Well-rounded medium tanks wise, you really can't go wrong with a T-44. Since Wargaming have buffed it, while again I think the T-44-100 will be the superior vehicle and make you loads more credits, there's nothing wrong with the standard T-44. On the other hand, if heavy tanks are more your thing, I'd probably look to pick up an IS-3, or I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I think a T-32 could actually be really good in Frontline. Now, why do I think a T-32 could be quite good? Because that turret with its 10 degrees of gun depression is going to be able to bounce everything. And sure, it doesn't have the best penetration in the game with, I think, just around about 200 standard rounds. It's still going to be enough for most of the vehicles you're going to be shooting at. And loads of people are playing glass cannon tanks like Progettos, Scorpions, Su-130 PMs. That you're easily going to be able to pick them apart, and they're going to really struggle if you manage to use that turret well. And finally, tank destroyer wise, well, it's probably just about getting the biggest gun and the best mobility, really. So I think that maybe the Su-100, or should I say 101, could be an absolute stellar vehicle for the front line. And finally, I just want to round off by saying just how much fun it was to play in a platoon inside the frontline game mode. Playing with Phil and M4, well, we definitely have years of practice playing together, and so we were quickly able to develop synergy. There's something about being able to respawn and then be able to play together, or if one of you dies, that it doesn't really matter because they can just respawn and then come back or go and work a different front, and then you can rendezvous later on to be able to achieve some epic stuff. It was just wonderful. One of my least favorite things in World of Tanks is when you die a little bit early and then you have to sit there and kind of watch your friends maybe play for possibly up to 10 minutes if they're having a really good long drawn out battle. It just didn't quite work out. I like the idea of being able to go back in and help them, and being able to do that in Frontline, massive thumbs up. And so if you haven't tried platooning, or haven't even tried the Frontline game mode yet, I thoroughly recommend it. Go and get up to a couple of friends, platoon up, and you'll be surprised about how impactful you can be when you're working together, which can almost completely take away that feeling of just uselessness that your team is not able to hold a front, or alternatively, push the enemy camp circle. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, long one today, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully this was useful for you, or maybe you just enjoyed the sport of playing my first ever game on the Plays for Free account and getting a ram kill to get general at the end. Although I guess we ended up in a defeat either way. If you did enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, make sure you give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments if you've got anything to add to what I've said. Have I missed out any vehicles that you would recommend for a free-to-play player? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.